Good afternoon, New Orleans, or wherever you may be. It's Wednesday at 4 o'clock, so this must be the Baldy and The Blonde show. That's the only way I can keep track of who I am.
That's it, Mr. Baldy.
And where I am. I'm all over the map.
All over the place, dude.
Okay, wait. Before we get started,
Yes,
they gave me something they asked me to read.
the radio station did.
Yes.
Good news, we have an app.
It says, read it in your best radio voice. I don't have a radio voice, but
I do.
let's
like
try
this.
it. Hey, folks, don't... No, I'm not going to do that.
Do it. It's fun.
Basically, it's WGSO has a new app.
Yes, thank
And it
goodness.
says you can take WGSO with you wherever you go. Just download the WGSO app and listen live to all your favorite local shows anytime, anywhere, whether you're at home, in the car, or on the go, or with a hoe. It's free. I added that part.
I thought
it's
so.
free, easy, and the best way to stay connected to your community voice, WGSO 990 AM. Download the WGSO app today and keep the conversation going.
So, y'all, it's great because I went through so many different attempts to explain how to listen to the show on the streaming
Yeah, no
before,
kidding.
and it was really hard.
It was a mess.
This is so easy. You just go to the App Store, type in WGSO, get the app, simple, and you can even interact with us while we're on the air. Now, we just found out about this, so we'll talk more about it later, because today we have a jam-packed show discussing the warmth of collectivism. And we are joined today by two guests who both experienced collectivism and loved it so much they had to escape. But we'll get to that in a minute. We're going to start with the clip that started it all. And this is the new communist mayor of our biggest city, New York City, Mr. 7 years, a U.S. citizen, refugee, mom is a film producer, turned him into a little movie star, and it's Mr. Mondami talking about how there's no more John Wayne, we're all going to be in the commune. Here we go.
We will replace the frigidity of rugged individualism with the warmth of collectivism.
Well, okay, so just before the show, I told you everybody's focusing on the phrase warmth of collectivism, and there's a much more dangerous word in there, and that's the word replace.
Yep.
Because notice he did not say that we will offer an alternative to rugged individualism, and that alternative will be the warmth of collectivism. He said we will replace.
Yep.
The only way you can replace a rugged individualist is you either convince that person to become a collectivist,
Yes.
or you exile them, imprison them, or shoot them.
And
How else do you replace?
And that's perfect segue for our
And
guest.
they've been doing this for 100 years. These collectivists.
And they've killed 100, or maybe 200 million people in the persuasion, right?
Anyway, let's.
So,
can you bring on our guest?
Yes,
please?
our guest is, I'm very happy to have join us today, Ms. Gisela Chevalier. And Gisela grew up in Cuba, and unlike a lot of Cubans that you've met in New Orleans, she actually was there till she was 30. And she's, it's not like she's 90. So she is also a very active politically, very stalwart Republican, and very well known in conservative circles, as well as being the owner of an excellent driving business called Trapa Cuba. I've known Gisela a long time, and I'm very grateful that she's able to join us today and share with us what life under communism actually is like. Gisela?
Hi, how are you, Michelle and the Bold?
Hi, Gisela.
It's Tom. So, Gisela, what year how old were you when Castro took over?
4 years old.
Okay.
Exactly 4 years and 3 months.
Not that you're being specific, right. So you stayed there until you were 30, correct?
Until 1985.
Okay. Can you just tell us, because we're going to focus on what happens when a communist takes over a country that was previously prosperous and doing well. Tell me some of the things that were the shocking changes that happened in Cuba while you were living there.
Well, the shocking changes were so many and so fast. Between January 1st, 1959, when Fidel took over, and 1965, so barely 6 years, changes started with nationalization of the private property owned by the U.S. Then immediately, in 1959, as a matter of fact, the agrarian reform, when the government took over the farms and the agricultural land owned by Cubans or foreign owners. In 1960, they took over the oil refineries owned by U.S. In 1960, they also had the nationalization of the Coca-Cola, Sears, and all those big companies, American.
Yes.
But it didn't stop there. From 60 to 63, then they expropriated everything else. Schools, private schools, everything. In 1960, as a matter of fact, they deported, and that is a very familiar word, deportation of the Cuban priests. Eduardo Bosa Masvidal plus 135 other Cuban priests were deported to Spain.
We're talking about Catholic priests, Gisela, Catholic priest?
Catholic priest. And this Catholic priest, Eduardo Bosa Masvidal, a very well-known Cuban Catholic priest, helped Castro and the communists when they were in the Sierra Maestra and all that process.
Oh, wow.
And Castro became his enemy because they knew, how to organize people. So they absolutely deported.
Wow. So Gisela, I'm sure that not everyone went along with this. So, for example, if you were a small farmer in Cuba and the government said, yeah, we're taking your farm, and you said, no, you can't do that, what would happen?
You cannot say no.
Mm-hmm. And if you do?
It's yes or yes.
Yeah.
Well, yes or yes. Back then, you could go to jail or you could be executed. And they made several public executions, okay, at the beginning between 59 and 61.
And if I'm not mistaken, when Castro was fighting in the mountains to oust the dictator Batista, he did not say that he was a communist, right? He came in like a wolf in sheep's clothing.
Yes. As a matter of fact, in one of his famous speeches, he said that his government, that the government was as green as the Cuban palm trees.
That's it. I remember that. Well, I mean, I remember other Cubans telling me that story, and it turned out, of course, that he was in cahoots with the Soviet Union.
With the Soviet Union,
yeah,
yes.
Total commie. And so then, can you tell me, you told me when we were getting ready for the show, that, for example, you were required to work on the government farms as a child, correct?
Yes. After 7th grade, they used to say, as a matter of fact, I have found out that lately they are not doing it because they don't have oil to move so many students to the farms. But when I was in 7th grade, barely 12 years old, I was sent to Camagüey. I'm from Havana. I was sent to Camagüey, an area that is called Vertientes, which is southeast way, and to work in the sugarcane, planting sugarcane crops. Yes.
Uh-huh. And you were
was
like...
21.
Go ahead.
Time was 21 days, but thereafter, every year, the schools were required to go at length 45 days, and then they didn't take us that far. They took us to the farms south of Havana or West Havana, depending where the farms were, picking up crops like potatoes or garlic, tomatoes, etc.
And that's forced labor of children, right?
But it was forced because if you didn't go, you didn't get the full grades that you were,
Yes.
All right, I hate to interrupt, but we're down to 1 minute.
Yes. So what would your advice be in the last, let's say you have about 30 seconds, Gisela. What is your advice to New Yorkers and other people who think it's cool to vote for these guys like Mamdani?
Communists.
Yes.
Okay, those communists, Mamdani and all his friends and supporters, I invite them to go and live in a communist country. Go to Cuba. Cuba will welcome them at the beginning for as long as the dollars are existing. after the dollars are gone, they are going to be like one other Cuban having the ration and books and the food and clothing and everything rationed because they don't even have supplies to provide for the people in Cuba, even having money, they cannot supply. So they
yeah, so it's not
what they need.
It's a bill of goods is being sold by Mondami, and there are people like you abundantly across this country that can actually shed true light on what it's actually like to live with communists. And I greatly appreciate, Gisela, you taking the time to share your thoughts with New Orleans.
Welcome back to the Baldy and the Blonde Show. I'm Tom Coates with Michelle Godin. We're here every Wednesday at 4. Today we're talking about the warmth of collectivism. Something tells me that collectivists have a certain warmth in their future.
Yes.
Very hot warmth in their future.
A hot eternity.
Yeah, maybe so.
A warmth of collectivism for all eternity. And we welcome back now we have our second guest, who is Elena. And Elena grew up in the U.S., but her life began in Cuba as a many-generational Cuban. And they had to leave, as many people do, because of communism. So we're going to talk with Elena about what she knows from growing up in a Cuban family and the warmth of collectivism.
Now, she left Cuba when she was little, right?
Yeah, she was 3.5.
Okay.
Yeah. So, all right. So, Elena, did you get to listen to Gisela Chevalier?
No, I apologize. I couldn't connect.
That's okay. So she was talking right before we went off the air for the commercials that, food was rationed, and I know that happened after you left, but I'd like to touch on that with you in terms of a visit from your grandmother later, and we'll get to that in a minute. But first, just the background is that your family had been in Cuba for forever, right? Since they came there from Spain, I think.
Correct.
And so everything, people see now, all they see about Cuba is that everything's in disrepair. They have these cool old cars. Of course, why do they have those old cars?
Because they had no other resources to get new cars.
That's right. Because
or in many cases even maintain those cars.
Yes, and it's only the ingenuity of the people that own those old cars that they even still run. Because there's nothing available to buy, and that is the reality of life under a communist. So I think that it's probably true. But you tell me, how did Castro himself live?
Oh, like a typical statist communist totalitarian fellow. He was well-fed, well-groomed,
yep,
well-maintained,
Lots of girlfriends.
The warmth of collectivism comes from the tight group of the people in power who love each other and no one else.
That's right. Because everybody else is equally despondent and poor, is the way it goes, other than the guys at the top, right? And I mean, because Cuba was a wealthy country before the communists took over, right?
Correct. We had industry. I think Cuba had more movie theaters, and I think second only to the U.S. in the entire Western Hemisphere in the 1950s.
Yeah, huge tourist destination.
Industry.
Go ahead.
Yeah, we had industry, big sugar production, obviously Bacardi, and certainly the fun side, the beaches, the entertainment, the gambling, all that stuff too.
Yeah, beautiful.
But families who were there and lived there, it was a wonderful place to raise a family. It was a free place to raise a family until Fidel Castro came into power and aligned himself with the Soviet Union.
So Gisela touched on this too, that originally he said he was as green as the palm trees of Cuba. He pretended he wasn't a communist. He went to college in the United States, but shortly after he was elected or took power, he revealed himself to be aligned with the Soviet Union. Is that?
Yes, about a year after he took power.
Okay, so
he aligned himself.
What prompted your family to get out?
So my family left in September 1962, and my youngest sister had been born about 4 months earlier. And my father simply did not want to raise his children under communist indoctrination with the little red handkerchiefs around your neck and marching in unison. That's not the way he was raised. It's not the way they lived. They had a really wonderful life. And he just didn't want his children raised in communism.
So I do have a question. When was that term, communism, first openly used? You said he kind of disguised his intentions when he first came in. When did it become, I don't know, you were little, but...
Yeah, it sounds like in January of 1959 is when he started aligning himself with the Soviet Union.
So did you think that Mondami's statement that he wanted to replace rugged individualism with the warmth of collectivism, did you think that was an open declaration of his true alignment?
Without a doubt.
Yeah, I mean,
without
right?
a doubt.
Well, I don't think any prominent U.S. politician at any level has ever used that particular word.
Never.
They
Collectivist.
hint at it, but they always dance around it. They're afraid to say it. Now, this guy's not afraid to say it.
Oh, no.
He said it loud and proud.
Yeah, he looks like... He's scary, man. He looks like he has been groomed from birth for this moment, you know? Like, he reminds me of Obama, you know? Very slick, very reptilian, very bizarre. Yeah, so... Anyway, so your dad, who I know, he recognized the danger, while other people, you know, frankly did not, right? I mean, some people thought, well, it's not going to be that bad or whatever. But, that, you know, kudos to your family for seeing it for what it was. It wasn't like...
Well,
go ahead.
I think a lot of families were wise to it. And what happened was with Batista, the first term that Batista came in, he was, you know, popularly elected.
Yeah.
It was legitimate. Cuba had a very good constitution, as my grandfather used to tell me. Of course, when the communists came in, the constitution went out the window.
Of course.
So much for paper over guns. But so a lot of families were starting to leave and had left. And as it became more and more clear and shortages started appearing, we were more rural. We were not in Havana per se. So, you know, the more rural you are, the more resources you can get. Things were starting to appear to have shortages like meat and you know, all the basics. So my parents had been stocking up and had actually a large freezer that they had stocked up. But unfortunately, there was a power outage, and they were in Havana visiting family, and everything got spoiled, and they were called by the neighbor that there were flies on the windows.
Oh, Lord.
So they had to rush back, and their little bit of stash for food had been ruined because of the power outage and the freezer going out. But that's the kind of thing that people were doing sort of proactively before the coupon books, the rationing started full blown.
And we only have a little more than a minute, Michelle.
Yeah, we do. I might carry her over to finish, but we'll see if we can finish this. I would like you to tell the story. My understanding is your grandmother stayed behind when y'all left, and
right.
Because her brother was in prison, and he was in prison.
Yeah.
Why?
He was in prison because he went to law school, actually, with Fidel Castro at the University of Havana, and I guess felt friendly enough with him that after he took power, he wrote him a letter asking him to stop being such a jerk and to really consider, you know, doing the right thing for the country. Well, Fidel Castro did not take kindly to that and ended up imprisoning him for what turned out to be 14 years for a letter. And my grandmother just did not want to leave him alone, so she stayed behind, and she ended up not coming. My mother never saw her father again. She came to the U.S. at the age of 22, I think, and you know, my grandmother saw her once again. They denied my mother the opportunity to go to my grandfather's funeral. When my grandmother got sick, they denied her the opportunity to go and see her. So they finally had a mercy flight for my grandmother, who had developed a...
Okay, I'm going to ask you. I'm going to ask you to stop right there, and I'll let you finish that story after the break. Hey, welcome back to Baldy and the Blonde. I'm Michelle Good, and here with Tom Coa. It's every Wednesday at 4, and you can catch us on the YouTube and on baldyandtheblonde.com, where all of our shows are replayed. And today we are visiting the warmth of collectivism through people that have actually lived through it, and are here to tell you just how delightfully warm it is to cast aside rugged individualism and go for collectivism. But before we go any further with our guest, I have something that I need to read to all of our listeners, because WGSO now has an app, and that is fantastic news. So you can go to the App Store, download it. You can listen to the show without any static, without having to be on the radio, without having to go later to our website. We welcome you, of course, but you can listen live, and it's real clear. So whether you are at home, in the car, or on the go, it's free, easy, and the best way to stay connected to your community voice, WGSO 990 AM. Download the WGSO app today and keep the conversation going. Anyway, we're going to be posting. We have to learn more about it. We just found out about it today, but apparently we can have discussions with you all while we're on the air, and we can also post some polls, which I greatly look forward to finding out how many of the lefties out there listening to us would agree to be in the warmth of collectivism. And why do they think it's going to be different this time after hundreds of millions of people died at the hands of their communist governments in the 20th century? And I'm excluding war. In fact, this would be a good time to just mention Bishop Robert Barron, who's really popular on YouTube. He's a Catholic bishop, and unlike most of them, he's actually an actual American who believes in American values, and he's not a communist globalist, unlike most of them, and I am a Catholic. Bishop Barron said, there was a line from Zoran Mandami's inaugural address that took my breath away, and he refers again to the intention to replace the frigidity of rugged individualism with the warmth of collectivism. He then goes on to say, collectivism in its various forms is responsible for the deaths of at least 100 million people in the last century. Socialist and communist forms of government around the world today, Venezuela, Cuba, North Korea, etc., are disastrous. Catholic social teaching has consistently condemned socialism and has embraced the market economy, which people like Mayor Mamdani caricature as rugged individualism. In fact, it is the economic system that is based on the rights, freedom, and dignity of the human person. And he ends with, for God's sake, spare me the, quote, warmth of collectivism, close quote. So we are rejoined by our guest, Elena, who was born in Cuba, whose family had lived there for hundreds of years, and who emigrated to the U.S. As a result of what her father saw to be the end of individual liberty, and he was correct. So, Elena, we were talking about the fact that there was food rationing in Cuba, and that was starting to happen right before you all left. And then you were telling us about how your mother was not allowed to go back to Cuba to see her father. He died. They wouldn't let her go to the funeral. And then you were telling us about your grandmother, and I believe she was able to visit you all once in the United States after your mom left, after your mom and dad left. Could you tell us about that?
Sure. As I mentioned, my mom was denied re-entry to Cuba for humanitarian reasons, for family reasons, and when my grandmother got ill, was finally allowed a mercy flight to Florida. She hadn't seen her mother since 1962, and we're talking about the early 80s. And so my grandmother came. It was obviously a shocking and emotional time. My mother and my grandmother were very close, and
must have been awful.
You know, it was very difficult. And I really want to, if I could make a quick point.
Sure, whatever.
I'm serving you as an eyewitness. You know,
Yeah.
These are facts that occurred. If people like the scientific method, this is the black and white of it. You
Yes.
can read whatever you want into it, but these are facts. So when my mother, you know, in the course of a regular day, went to the grocery store, she took my grandmother with her, and my grandmother went to, I guess they went to a Dixie or something like that, and she almost fainted because she had not seen that level, that quantity of food in decades.
Yeah.
So, those are the kinds of things that happen. Communist governments tend to target to destroy the family because they want to become the family. You know, they want to become our God.
Yes.
So,
speaking
yeah.
of God, yeah. How was it with churches? Were y'all allowed to?
Church?
Were people allowed to continue? Because it was a very Catholic country, right?
Very Catholic, and by the time we left, priests and nuns were being sent out of the country,
Right.
were being pushed out. They hadn't completely closed down the churches yet. I'm talking about 1962, but that came later.
Yes.
And I think there went like a 10-year period
Yes.
that the churches were completely closed.
So that was covered by the other guests, and we're going to go to some of our clips and keep you on and ask you to comment on some of these things. But before we do, somebody asked us a question about the embargo, and quite often what you hear is the reason Cuba is poor and has old cars is because the U.S. will not trade with them. My understanding is every other country in the world trades with Cuba. It is not the lack of U.S. trade that has debilitated them. It is communism. Do you agree or disagree?
I would agree.
Yeah. Because
you've got Spain that is a major trade country with them. I mean, Spain has built a ton of hotels and the tourism industry.
Canada.
Yeah. Canada uses tourism down there quite a bit.
Europeans go there for the beaches, all that. So, okay.
Yeah.
Tom, let's move on to our clips, and we'll, Elena, ask you for comments.
Well, Kobe, how much time we got?
Oh, you got some.
Okay. All right. So I want to start with going right back to the beginning. Let's hear a little 5-second quote that started all this with Mamdani. And then following that, you're going to hear a commentator from Romania. Romania lived under communism for about 40 years, from the late 40s to the late 80s.
Right.
We will replace the frigidity of rugged individualism with the warmth of collectivism.
Ugh.
Famous words spoken by every communist in history. This is exactly how communism came to power in my country, Romania, via collectivism. First, they confiscated private land. Then they used terror to enforce collectivism. The regular Romanian citizens were arrested, beat up, humiliated publicly, left to rot in prison, and some even executed.
Okay, so the question that we asked, what do you do with those rugged individualists that don't go along with your warm collectivism? That guy just gave the answer.
Yeah.
You kill them, you throw them in prison, you terrorize them.
Same as like Elena's great uncle,
Yeah.
who, knew Fidel and said, "Hey, buddy, back off,"
Right,
and went to jail for 14 years.
Yeah, they have a history of that exact
And I have the horrifying jail story of somebody I knew whose uncle was put in jail, and in the cell was designed so that you could not, in any way, shape, or form, stretch your body out. You could not stand up or lay down. You could never completely extend your body. These are evil people.
Oh, yeah. All right, let's continue here.
The next step for collectivism was destroying the independent farmer class. These people were a threat to the regime because they were able to stay self-sufficient and did not rely on the state. Independence was and still is the biggest threat to communism.
Okay, that says it all.
Right.
He said, he used the word independence. It's basically individualism.
Yes.
That is the biggest threat to communism. Always has been, still is, just like he said. And there's Mamdani. That's why he says it needs to be replaced.
Yeah, he's not asking, like you said, he's not saying, how about we have an alternative?
Right.
No, we're going to
We're
replace your individual ass.
Because you're the biggest threat, exactly
Yeah.
like this Romanian guy said. Elena, you jump in with anything you have to say.
Yeah, if you have something you want to...
Yeah, the whole point about individualism out the window is absolutely true. I worked with a woman from Romania once, and when it came time for her to go to college while they were still under communist rule, she had told them she wanted to go into a corporate environment, and they, for accounting purposes, and they told her no, that she had to become a lawyer. So,
No personal choices, no private...
No individualism.
No individualism.
All right, let's keep her going.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
They made it in such a way that owning more than others was a crime. Once all that happened, the communists started confiscating the food from farmers, leaving families to die. They also confiscated the livestock. This resulted in famine, malnutrition, and the collapse of productivity. Romania literally went from being the #1 exporter of grain in Europe to chronic shortages of food.
I don't know. How do you even add to that?
I mean, it's always that way.
Always the same story.
It's always the same damn thing. Like in China, I don't know how many, 100 million people were starved to death? Russia, 60 million?
Sure, in Ukraine.
Same thing.
Yes.
Just, just take away the means of production from the people, put it in the hands of a state, and you are guaranteed a death sentence.
Okay, wait. I want to finish this guy's clip
Yeah, go
before
ahead.
the break. Listen to this.
But that wasn't enough. The communists then banned free market. No free sale of crops, no private trades, no bargaining, classic socialist failure. 15 years later, the communists declared victory. 90% of all farmland in Romania was collectivized. Romanian collectivism was forced, violent, economically disastrous, morally corrupt, and designed to control, not help. Only for today in the United States of America to be in New York City. I swear to God, some Americans are the dumbest morons on the planet.
Okay.
Amen.
That is an
Right
awesome
on, bro.
quote. Jeez.
Right?
This is a guy who lived it in his home country of Romania, and we've talked to two people today who lived it in their home country of Cuba.
All right, and we will be back after this break going further into the rise of communism in the United States of America. Shocking as it may seem.
Welcome back to Baldy and the Blonde with Michelle Godin and Tom Coates. Actually, that would be Blondie and the Bald. Tom Coates and Michelle Godin. That's Baldy and the Blonde.
That's better.
That's, yeah.
Blondie and the Bald just doesn't have quite the same
Not quite.
same ring to it.
All right, so let's just get back, because I want to make sure we get through all these. Let's get back to more clips about the warmth of collectivism. So I've got about 6 or so other clips from Danny's inauguration speech I want to go through. Here we go.
We will return the vast resources of this city to the workers who call it home.
Okay, that's nonsense. Return the vast resources of this city to the workers who call it home.
I
To
mean, what does
return
that
something
mean?
implies that it was theirs. Like the workers once owned the vast resources of New York City.
They never
No,
did.
they never did.
I mean, let's just say, for example, Rockefeller Center. How would the workers of the city have owned Rockefeller Center?
well, first of all, the resources of New York City are massive debt. So maybe he wants to return the massive debt to the workers. Now that sounds like a communist
That sounds
plan.
commie, for
Yeah.
sure.
All right, let's see. Move on here.
Not only will we make it possible for every New Yorker to afford a life they love once again,
No, you won't.
No.
we will overcome the isolation that too many feel and connect the people of this city to one another.
He's talking about New York City.
What is he talking about? New Yorkers.
Yeah,
Come on, man.
he's going to connect. How are you going to do that?
What? We're gonna have
oh,
like
you
a-
know what? I meant to clip a Kumbaya song in Kraft.
That would be, I'll just sing it real quick. Kumbaya, my lord.
That's
Come
what
on,
he's talking
man.
about. He's
In
gonna
New
turn,
York?
He's going
What?
to turn New York City into a Kumbaya
I mean,
fest.
that is just so... Look, man, he just became an American citizen. I mean, after they hit him in some...
Yeah, right.
Whatever.
All right, here we go.
The cost of childcare will no longer discourage young adults from starting a family because we will deliver universal childcare for the many by taxing the wealthiest few.
Okay, well, on the bright side, that would reduce some Somali daycare fraud. Right? All right, here we go.
Wait, Tom.
What?
This would be a point of our guest from England from a few weeks ago sent us a little message about what the problem with socialism is. And, of course, you knew the historical quote. What is it? Maggie Thatcher.
Oh, well, the problem with socialism is that pretty soon you run out of other people's money. But that's not the real problem.
No.
The problem is death and destruction.
Yeah, but that is the bigger.
That's
the
the-
bigger picture is
yes.
they'll kill you if you don't go along.
Right.
Those in rent-stabilized homes will no longer dread the latest rent hike because we will freeze the rent.
Oh, yeah.
That has a long history of being successful.
Certainly not.
Because then landlords have no reason to stay in the business.
Or to fix up the properties.
Or to fix a property.
So,
right.
you know.
They'll turn their houses into income-producing properties that are not rents that can be frozen.
Yep. Just remember, too, in COVID, this was, the commie training of COVID, where little guys who owned, like, a little property that was for rent, that they rented, what happened was, oh yeah, they froze the rent for the renters, but you still had to pay the
Still had to
mortgage
pay.
and the insurance. So
Whatever, man.
Yeah,
It sounds like a great idea,
yeah,
right?
what
Okay,
a
here we go.
star this guy is.
Getting on a bus without worrying about a fare hike or whether you'll be able to get to your destination on time will no longer be deemed a small miracle because we will make those buses fast and free.
Of course, a few days later, the fares got hiked. And you know what, though? I looked this up. The mayor's office has no say in fares. He has no authority to raise them, lower them, or make them free. There's a board that does all that. But as I think it was it Elena or maybe it was Gisela mentioned, Constitution just goes right out the window. I think it was
yes, Elena.
Just some paper. Just get rid of it. The communists just will rule. That'll be his plan.
That's it. That's
Okay.
what they're
right.
replacing you, Tom.
Yes, that's their goal.
Replacement.
Okay, here we go. Here's a big one.
I was elected as a democratic socialist, and I will govern as a democratic socialist.
Yes,
Okay,
sir.
the reason that one is important. Now, we did a show on this, and I don't have time to go over more than just a couple of points, but I want to read a few things taken directly off the website from the Democratic Socialists of America, and he just said, "I ran as one, and I will govern as one." They are for public ownership and funding of our healthcare system, social ownership of all major industry and infrastructure, including energy utilities, the electric grid, and freight railroads. How about this one? Defund the police by cutting budgets annually towards zero. Free all people from incarceration. Repeal local ordinances that criminalize squatting and other productive occupation of unused houses.
Yep.
End all misdemeanor offenses. Those are just a few examples.
Just
Let
a
everybody
few.
out of jail. There's no such thing as a misdemeanor anymore. Decriminalize all that kind of stuff.
And the communist government owns everything, which we heard from Gisela and Elena how well that worked out.
And the things that I read were almost verbatim from their website. That's their platform. He said he ran as one and will govern as one.
That's very
And he
good.
wrote his words very carefully, you can bet.
Well, and as you pointed out, no one in American history has ever identified as a collectivist.
No, no one has ever uttered those words. AOC, Bernie, no, they have espoused collectivist ideas, but they've always avoided that word because they know it's toxic. This guy, he's openly saying it now.
he's an open communist.
Oh, yeah, and then, I forgot, we have one more clip. This is by this See You Later, Sia Weaver.
This is the woman that Mondami the commie put in charge of housing. And, of course, just as an aside, I'd like to say that her mother owns a $1.1 million house.
1.6.
1.6 in Nashville, yeah.
Yes.
But nonetheless, here we go with another white liberal commie. Here we go, woman.
I think the reality is that for centuries we've really treated property as an individualized good and not a collective good, and we are going to transitioning to treating it as a collective good and towards a model of shared equity will require that we think about it differently, and it will mean that families, especially white families, but some POC families who are homeowners as well, are going to have a different relationship to property than the one that we currently have.
That's basically saying they won't own their houses anymore.
Well, and how do they expect to accomplish
that? I should
seizure
have...
of private property.
Well, of course.
Yes.
I should have explained. That was from March of 2021. She is the newly appointed director of New York City's Office to Protect Tenants.
Yep.
And in March of 2021, she openly said that in Italy, especially white families, those are her words, and POC
and
homeowners,
some
persons
POCs, people of color. It'll come as a great surprise to the people of color of New Orleans who own their own homes.
She did not say seize private property, but that's exactly what she meant.
How else?
And I'm going to, you know what, if I look at that, let me look at that list on the DSA's website.
Says.
There, I don't see the one about seizing private property, but it was... shoot, now I've lost it. But
okay.
there's a one about the making it so you can squat in houses.
Yeah.
And you know what? And during his speech to Mamdani mentioned the South African Freedom Declaration of Freedom, and in that they say that they will basically take unused housing. If you've got one too many houses
Yeah.
or 10 too many houses,
Give it to
they
them.
will take those from you
Yes.
and give them to the unhoused.
Unhoused.
Or give them to those who are renters.
And
So that's what we're talking about
That's
here.
what we're talking about, folks. We're talking about taking your stuff and giving it to those who
And
don't.
it's not like this has never happened.
And we have 10 seconds left to wrap this up and say this is going to be the first of many shows focusing on the rise of communism in the United States of America. And we'll base it on history.